From the Watershed Committee of the Ozarks, please welcome Mike Kromrey. And from Ozark Greenways, please welcome Mary Kromrey.
All right, so I work for the Watershed Committee of the Ozarks, along with our sponsors, city utilities, the city and the county. We've been working to protect your drinking water since 1984. And as a nonprofit, we do also operate the Watershed Center out at Valley Watermill Park. Hopefully a lot of the kiddos in your lives have been there for a field trip before.
Hi there, and I'm Mary Kromrey, and I'm with Ozark Greenways. And we're a small nonprofit that's been preserving and enhancing the Ozarks' natural heritage since 1991, and we're probably most famous for our trail system. So today, we are going to be sharing with y'all why we think connecting our streams and trails is our community's next big thing. And what's pretty awesome about this is that our next big thing isn't anything new at all. It's right here, it's all around us. It's our beautiful outdoors, but especially our creeks and our rivers and our lakes. So we're going to take a few minutes today to do some high-level connecting of the dots. But before we do that, Mike's going to give us a brief look back of our nation's history, or our region's history, and then we are going to connect some dots and talk about things in three main topic centers. We're going to look at health, how it affects the natural environment and human health. We're also going to touch on equity, and then we're also going to look at economic benefits, economic vitality, and then maybe plant a few seeds about what the next big thing could be for our region. Mr. Kromrey, take it away.
Brief, right? So we're going to talk about history first, because we got to remember our roots here in Springfield, Missouri. And I put this quote up by Charles Kuralt that says, "America's a great story, and there's a river on every page of it." And that could not be more true than for our community. Henry Rowe Schoolcraft, you recognize that name from Schoolcraft Freeway. He was the first person to travel these hills and write about it in his journals. And what we can glean from his story is that this was a beautiful place covered with savanna-like uplands and these deep forested valleys with old-growth trees and cane thickets. And the water in our streams was so clear, it actually fooled him into riding his horse across a shallow stream, which turned out to be about 10 feet deep, soaking all of his effects. If we fast forward a little bit farther in time to the actual founding of our community, John Polk Campbell was the fellow's name. Some Native Americans from the Delaware Town settlement brought him to what is now called the Jordan Creek. And he saw large trees and a beautiful stream and springs. He thought, this is the place to start my homestead, which later became our community. There is no other Springfield across this nation that can honestly say that it was founded on the freshwater springs that sustain us here in this community. So our rivers and our roots run deep here. And when I see a picture like this, first of all, it's beautiful. This is a local stream. But I need you to now start to see that the way I see that as both a scientist and a fisherman. When I look at that, I see the trees. And those trees are providing shade. And what the shade does is it cools the water. And water that is cool holds more oxygen. And water that has more oxygen has more life. Along the sides of the streams, we call that area the riparian zone. We also call it the buffer. And on the sides, in the riparian area, we see large trees. Those trees give us the benefit of armoring and shielding the stream when it floods, keeping our soil in place, keeping the stream from wandering around in the valley. Those trees are also a buffer because the trees and plants are the first line of defense. Any nutrients or bacteria or dirt coming off the landscape, which we call the watershed, has a chance to be filtered before it enters the stream. So nature is actually giving us some tremendous benefits. When we translate that to the urban environment, here's what it looks like. This is one of our beautiful Ozark Greenways trails. We are receiving all of those benefits from nature that I just mentioned, and there's more. One of the added benefits is when we have a Greenways trail, the stream can be a stream. When it floods, there's no expensive infrastructure to destroy, right? We're letting the stream be a stream. We let it flood, no big deal. It can slow down, spread out, and soak in, recharging our aquifers. Also, this is really important because when you see an Ozark Greenways trail, most of those trails have easements. And easements are a method of perpetual protection for our streams, meaning when we put a Greenways trail, it's going to be there for generations because of that conservation easement. So Greenways are truly one of our community's best ideas as we're thinking about health, environmental health. And there's still more benefits. This is a sort of funny slide.
I don't know what's about to happen.
I can honestly say Mrs. Kromrey has nothing to do with my explanation of Ozark Greenways as Geneways. And I was going to try to explain this with interpretive dance. That also did not pass the committee. But I am a turkey hunter, and I want to explain how Greenways are Geneways. So imagine that the guy there, the big Tom Turkey, he's having a conversation with his lady friend on the other side of Highway 65, okay? And as a turkey hunter, it would sound like, right? And that's like, hey, baby.
Oh my God.
You want to come over? That was her. And then so he might be like, yeah, I'm coming right over. And she's like, no, you probably shouldn't do that. The highway's really busy. Well, but if you know anything about Tom turkeys, there's no stopping them. And, he crosses Highway 65 and it's like, So that didn't go so well. We have a failure to communicate genetic information. Why did the turkey cross the road? Sex. That's why. So, all right, sorry, thank you.
I'll just stand right over here, quiet at my leisure.
Okay, so here's the deal. In seriousness, as we continue to grow as a community, our urban environment continues to disconnect the natural environment. It's called fragmentation. And the greenways that we have are little pockets of nature, little pockets of habitat. We want to save the honeybees. They can use the flowers in the riparian areas in the Greenways Trail. Monarch butterflies are in crisis. They need milkweed. Where can milkweed grow? It can grow along our Greenways Trail, where we always strive to have native plants. So greenways are a really wonderful solution for health.
I mean, man, I have to follow Reed Academy singing and then the turkey sex joke. So, hi, it's so great to be here with y'all today. So Mike talked about how these health impacts in our natural environment. So I'm going to briefly touch on the health impacts that it has on us, our human health. So top of mind right now are our soaring healthcare costs, right? For our nation, for our state, probably for many of us in this room. And so trails are one way that can help combat those soaring healthcare costs. And maybe you're wondering how. Well, think about it. You can get outside easily on a greenway trail. You can be active, you can be social, you can play, you can have fun. And with that, that allows you to feel better, to be better, right? Hopefully it's going to help you have a lower incidence of those chronic diseases that are plaguing our healthcare system. And here in Springfield, Missouri, our top 3 issues are cardiovascular disease, lung disease, and mental health. A simple walk on a greenways trail most days of the week are going to help all of those issues. And newsflash, healthier people don't go to the doctor as much. And when you don't go to the doctor as much, you start to see those healthcare costs come down for employees and employers alike. So I know I really oversimplified that, but it's actually pretty simple. So in Lincoln, Nebraska, they wanted to put some dollars to that, and they did a study, and they realized and learned that for every $1 that they put into their trail system, they get $3 back in cost savings primarily in medical and healthcare costs. 1 to 3, that's pretty good. Let's say healthcare costs aren't a concern to you. That's great. Look at our trail system in another light. We have over 70 miles of trails on the ground. That's like having access to a 1.95 billion square foot health club 365 days a year. So I think it's pretty obvious that when you get outside and you move around, you're going to have benefits for your cardiorespiratory system. But let's talk a little bit about mental health. There's a lot of talk right now. Japan's done some studies. We've done some studies here in the United States about nature bathing or eco-bathing. And we know that just going outside for 10 to 15 minutes and taking that stroll, allowing your time to have a brain break, is going to have huge health benefits. It's going to decrease depression. It's going to decrease anxiety. It's going to decrease some of those stress hormones. And we all need a brain break. We've got a lot going on. We're constantly connected to technology. So this is one of the great ways to do it, is to go outside and take a walk. And Will Childs was actually just sharing with me is that he values our trail system because they are crucial for his creative process. So something as simple as a trail can have a huge impact on all of us.
So this is Jordan Creek, and I loved the idea this morning to blow it up, to daylight it, right? This Jordan Creek is underground now through the middle of our city. And people did that to solve a problem, the problem of flooding. We built too close to the creek, and then we put it in a box to try to solve that. It still floods, by the way. But in doing so, in putting Jordan Creek underground, we have caused some other problems which relate to this next topic we're going to talk about, which is equity. In destroying the habitat for the wildlife that used to live there, we've also created a habitat for the most marginalized members of our community. I'll never forget, our office used to be downtown on one of the places where you would get in or out of Jordan Creek. And there was a summer thunderstorm, and as the water was rising, I looked down to the concrete walls where Jordan Creek is, and there are kids who live there throwing their personal effects up over the wall, over the chain link fence. Unfortunately, Jordan Creek has become a dangerous place for kids, even though it's sort of a de facto shelter. And there are more things to think about when we think about equity. One is another thing I call the ditch rule. So if you design a stream to be like a ditch, and it looks like a ditch, people will treat it like a ditch. Part of my graduate research at Missouri State was to study the health of our urban streams. The way you study the health of a stream is by looking at the life in it. You can basically get a report card for how healthy it is. And when I was mucking around looking for the fish and the bugs to measure, I found actually more cigarette butts than living creatures. It looks like a ditch, we treat it like a ditch. But on the hopeful side and flip side, if it looks like a stream, people will treat it like a stream. So when we're thinking about the topic of equity, I think it's not too big a thing to aspire for all of our streams to be fishable and swimmable for all people and healthy for all life.
Right, and just like we shouldn't have to worry about our kids being able to head outdoors and play in the creeks, we shouldn't have to worry about our kids, or any of us for that matter, being able to get away, to get around from here to there safely. And that ties into that equity piece too. So trails can provide that opportunity for safe and equitable transportation. So whether you are on foot or a bicycle or in this super sweet wheelchair, you can have access to places that you might not otherwise have access to that aren't friendly for people who have that active transportation. So trails provide those safe transportation choices for people regardless of mode, and they can help remove those barriers of owning a vehicle. Along that same topic, right here I have a picture of our Ward Branch Greenway. A lot of folks don't know about this one, but it is a key corridor for folks that need to rely on themselves for transportation who may not have a vehicle. we have some high traffic, high volume roads here in Springfield that just aren't safe for pedestrians or people in wheelchairs or bicycles. And what this Greenway Trail does is it provides a safe connection under 3 major roadways: Highway 60, Republic Road, and Campbell Avenue. So they can traverse that, and I guess the turkeys could as well, safely and effectively to get to where they're going.
So our last topic to discuss is economics, and it's really important that we think about value and economics separately, or at least a little bit differently. If you've ever been to a developing nation, you've probably experienced a different value for water. People who don't have clean water really value that water. We turn on the tap and it's clean, it's safe, it's cheap, we forget about it. So value is something a little bit different, but the economics of water go a little bit like this. If our sources of water are clean, it's much cheaper to provide, to deliver, or treat that and deliver it for drinking water. Plentiful water is cheaper than scarce water. And when you pollute a riverway or an aquifer, it's really, really expensive to get it unpolluted. So those are all things that we actually have control over by our behaviors as a community. Also, when we're thinking about the economics of water, Jeff is going to talk just a minute about the $11 billion economic engine just to the south of us. That's Branson. They're our downstream neighbors. So we have this sort of, you've heard the saying, we all live downstream. We have the almost economic responsibility not to screw up those lakes. And just a quick fact about, stormwater and sewer water. Because of the Clean Water Act, the EPA says your community has to do at least this good of a job for those things leaving your community. And recently there was a settlement with St. Louis, Kansas City, and St. Joe. Kansas City settled for $4.5 billion. St. Louis settled for $4.7 billion. St. Joe, smaller than Springfield, $462 million. They made a settlement with Springfield, Missouri for $200 million. That's still a hefty bill. It's not going to solve all of our sewer and stormwater problems. But because we work proactively as a community to do what's right and the investments we have made, we are in a much better place. And ultimately, our citizens and our businesses have less of a financial burden because of this spirit of protecting our waterways that we have here in this community.
Going backwards.
Oh, sorry.
Going forwards. Okie dokie. So those are some great points about the economic benefits of cost saving. So let's talk about the economic business or the economic return when we're looking at generating revenue, which is what healthy trails and streams can do for our communities. They can help generate revenue. Well, how do they do that? Well, let's think about it. They can increase our property values, they can help recruit and retain businesses and talent, and they can help sell. So here's one example. I did a real quick Google search. Apartment, trail, Springfield Mo. And this is what popped up. Let's read it together. Great southeast Springfield location, just 1 block south of Sequoia Park, and located across the street from the Galloway Creek Greenway Trail. You'll have easy access to nature and the outdoors. If that doesn't sell, I don't know what does. But let's take a more regional look. Several years ago, Columbia was able to land IBM in part to their trail system and their park system that they have. And most recently in the news, Amazon. They've been looking for a new headquarters. And guess what was in their request for proposals? They had lots of things that they wanted, but one of them that they called out was this connectivity and this walkability, and to make sure that there were trails and parks and green spaces. And so our state answered that call and heavily promoted our Katy Trail system, our park system, as they helped to promote Kansas City. So these are definitely things that can help sell. Another way to look at it is the trails themselves have prime real estate for all of those folks that are walking and wheeling down the trails. So here in Springfield, Missouri, in a more urban setting, Galloway Creek Greenway, which is one of our most popular greenway trails, look at all of the businesses and development that's occurring along that trail. We've got 2 right here, for example. Then I want you to think about regional connectivity. Look at our Frisco Highline Trail that's bringing those tourism dollars into Willard and Walnut Grove and Wishart and Bolivar. I mean, those are small rural towns, and when the rail lines went away, this whole rail trail concept really helped bring those dollars back into rural communities. For example, of some really hard economic impact dollars, the Katy Trail did a study in 2014, and they determined that for every $1 million that was invested in the Katy Trail, $18 million was returned back into that community. That's pretty cool, pretty cool. Then the last aspect we're going to talk about when we're talking about economic vitality is, let's go back to that ditch rule. When you have a ditch, people are going to treat it like a ditch. It attracts litter, it's ugly, it's an eyesore, it's a liability. But if you put a trail next to a stream, people think of it as this beautiful park-like setting, and they change their behaviors and their attitudes accordingly. So you no longer have this liability and eyesore, you have this beautiful community asset. And this is an example along Sunset, right here in Springfield, Missouri. The South Creek Greenway used to run along South Creek, and it was housed in this concrete ditch-like thing, and it was ugly. And a few years ago, they looked at removing that concrete, and they have returned a section of that stream to its natural setting, and there's not as much trash. The birds and the wildlife have come back, and you can just tell that people are enjoying it more. So, along this concept, Jordan Creek, it's underground. Help us imagine the possibilities if we did daylight Jordan Creek. And what would be really cool, selfishly, from a Greenways point of view, is in our comprehensive plan, there is a trail component that goes to the daylighting of Jordan Creek. Jordan Creek Greenway starts up at Smith Park. You can tootle down under Chestnut Expressway. Before you know it, you're in Jordan Valley Park, and then you get to Jefferson Street. And what do you do and where do you go, right? It's a one-way street, there's some sidewalks, but there's no trail. And then the Jordan Creek Greenway Trail picks back up over at Mount Vernon in Kansas, and then you can tootle on past Cruise Dog Park and over to Ewing Park. So we've got that gap. Imagine the possibilities if we filled that gap, and the ripple effect that that could have on downtown for all of the people who live, work, and play there. So while we're thinking about big picture, we hope that we have demonstrated to you how our trails and streams protect our most vital resources, our water, our land, but most importantly, all of the people that live here, us. These connections do not just affect one thing. It's like that ripple effect throughout our community that benefits all of us and will carry us into the future. So this map, some of y'all are going to love it, and some of y'all are going to hate it because it's crazy. I think Ryan Mooney probably loves it because he just sees lines and lines and lines of opportunity and possibility. But basically, let's get these green lines connected. The green lines on the map are our trails, and that's going to protect our blue lines, all of our waterways that are such a huge economic engine for our community and our region. So, what could we do next? What about that urban core loop of trails where we connect Jordan Creek and Fast Night Creek and Jordan Creek, Wilson's Creek, and Fast Night Creek for a loop? Those are all greenways that are there. Let's fill those gaps. What if we make a bigger loop where we loop in South Creek and Galloway Creek? Now let's look regionally. The small town of Ozark recently passed funding with a designation to trails. Our Frisco Highline Trail takes us to Bolivar. Once you get to Bolivar, you're getting pretty close to Clinton, Missouri, where the Katy Trail is. Look down to the south of us to northwest Arkansas, the tremendous possibility there as they're looking at coming across the state line into Pineville. So, in closing, cities with better trail networks and clean water, they foster healthier people and places that are just cooler and that you want to be in and be around. They're going to help us compete for talent in today's economy. I don't want to be just another mediocre Midwestern city. I want us to be the queen city that we are, and for everybody to know that. And 3, this is a cost-effective way for cities to invest in its infrastructure and its people. Think about the stories and the examples we have shown you. Trails and water protection are a way to have low cost, high return that are going to pay dividends into the future. So we're going to need your help. We're going to need you to help expand these ideas. We're going to need you to help fund these ideas. But most of all, we need you to get outside and enjoy our beautiful outdoors and our amenities like our creeks and our rivers and our lakes and our trails.
You put the fun in fund. Hey, so that's it. Join us in the conversation hall, social media. We both have lovely annual events that you can attend or sponsor. And thanks for your time.